The armored cruiser HMS Hэмpshir vanished into a gale-force storm off the coast of Orkney on the evening of June 5, 1916. In less than 15 minutes, the sea swallowed the warship and nearly 650 men. Among the lost was Field Marshal Lord Kitchener, Britain's Secretary of State for War, the face of the nation's recruitment campaign, and a figure thought indispensable to the war effort. The official explanation pointed to a German mine, but the speed of the sinking, the secrecy of the mission, and the staggering political cost fueled immediate suspicions. Was it a tragic accident of war, or something more? For a century, the wreck held the answer, lying in silence 60 meters below the turbulent surface. What really happened to HMS Hэмpshir? HMS Hэмpshir was not a front-line battleship built for the North Sea, but a county-class armored cruiser designed for long-range service across the British Empire. By 1916, she was a veteran of the Battle of Jutland, having survived the largest naval engagement of the war just days before her final voyage. On land, the war had reached a critical stalemate. The Western Front was a bloody, stagnant trench system, consuming men and material at an unsustainable rate. The Allied powers were desperate for a breakthrough. This desperation shaped Kitchener's secret mission. Russia, Britain's eastern ally, was faltering. Its armies were poorly supplied, and morale was collapsing. The British War Cabinet decided that only a figure of immense stature could negotiate a renewed commitment from Tsar Nicholas II. Lord Kitchener, the iconic face of the British war effort, was chosen. The stakes could not have been higher. A successful mission might bolster the Eastern Front, force Germany to divert forces, and relieve pressure on the West. Failure, or worse, the loss of Kitchener himself, would be a catastrophic blow to national morale. The decision to sail was made against a backdrop of severe weather warnings. A fierce northeasterly gale was battering the Orkney Islands, home to the British Grand Fleet's base at Scapa Flow. Most naval movements were postponed, but the mission was deemed too urgent to delay. The route chosen was along the west coast of Orkney, a passage considered hazardous even in calm conditions due to its exposure to the open Atlantic and strong currents. It was also, crucially, believed to be clear of the known German minefields laid to the east. The Admiralty selected HMS Hэмpshir for the task. She was a capable, experienced ship, and her captain Herbert Saville was highly regarded. The plan was to slip out of Scapa Flow under the cover of bad weather, a tactic intended to conceal their departure from any watching German U-boats. They were betting that the storm itself would be their best protection. At 4:45 p.m. on June 5th, HMS Hэмpshir, flying Kitchener's distinctively long paying-off pennant, departed Scapa Flow. The weather was already deteriorating, with winds gusting to near hurricane force and heavy seas. Two destroyer escorts, HMS Unity and HMS Victor, accompanied her, but the conditions were so severe that within an hour, the smaller vessels were struggling to keep pace. Recognizing the danger to the destroyers and the impossibility of their anti-submarine role in such a storm, Captain Saville made a fateful decision. He signaled them to return to base. HMS Hэмpshir would proceed alone into the deepening gloom. The cruiser pressed on, battling the storm as she turned to follow the treacherous coastline near Marwick Head. The crew was at action stations, a standard procedure when transiting dangerous waters. But the primary concern was the weather, not an unseen underwater threat. Around 7:40 in the evening, approximately 1.5 miles offshore, a devastating explosion tore through the ship's forward section on her port side. The blast was instantaneous and overwhelming. It ruptured the forward boiler room and likely broke the cruiser's back. The lights went out immediately, and the ship took on a heavy list to port. In the darkness and chaos, with the storm raging, the crew had almost no chance. The severe list made it impossible to launch most of the lifeboats on the starboard side. Those on the port side were smashed against the hull by the violent seas. Men were thrown into water so cold it induced hypothermia within minutes. Only 2 life rafts and a single skiff were successfully launched. Able seaman William Slessor, one of the few survivors, later described a scene of utter desperation, men scrambling for any piece of wreckage as the ship, her bow already submerged, slid beneath the waves in under 15 minutes. The icy water and towering waves claimed most of them. Out of a crew of 649, plus Kитченер and his staff, only 12 men managed to survive the night, washing ashore on the rocky Orkney coast. The official Admiralty inquiry, convened quickly after the disaster, concluded that HMS Hэмpshir had struck a mine laid by the German submarine U-75. The wreck was declared a war grave, and the case was officially closed. But the inquiry's findings were contested almost immediately. The lack of a submarine sighting, the specific route that was supposed to be safe, and the sheer political magnitude of the loss gave rise to persistent doubts. Survivors reported only a single explosion, inconsistent with a torpedo attack, but the Admiralty's verdict stood. The silence that followed did little to quell the speculation that would endure for the next 100 years. The families of the lost were left with the official story, but the sea held a different truth. The official verdict of a mine strike failed to silence the questions. The loss of Kitchener, a national icon, was a profound shock that bred immediate conspiracy. In the public grief, some whispered of sabotage, a bomb planted aboard the ship by Irish Republicans or even German agents. Others suggested the Admiralty had deliberately sent the Hэмpshir into a known danger zone to eliminate Kitchener, whom some in the government saw as an obstacle. The swiftness of the inquiry and the lack of a thorough public examination of alternatives only fueled these dark suspicions. In the decades following the war, the debate narrowed to a more technical but equally persistent argument: minefield or U-boat. The German naval archives confirmed that U-75 had indeed laid a minefield off Orkney in May 1916. Its location, however, was not precisely charted by British intelligence. Proponents of the U-boat theory argued that a submarine could have been waiting, capitalizing on the storm for a surprise attack. Yet no U-boat commander ever claimed the sinking, which was highly unusual for such a significant victory. The wreck's status as a protected war grave prevented intrusive examination for most of the 20th century, leaving the mystery to simmer in historical texts and naval circles. Key pieces of evidence, like survivor accounts of a single explosion and the Admiralty's own secret wartime assessments, were picked over by researchers, but without physical proof, the debate remained academic. The story evolved from an immediate shock into a century-old cold case, a puzzle waiting for technology to provide the final clue. The breakthrough came from modern oceanography. In the 1970s, a team led by nautical archaeologist Sid Wignall began a determined search, using early side-scan sonar to scour the seabed off Marwick Head. After years of effort, they finally located the wreck in 1977. It lay in approximately 60 meters of water, broken into 2 main sections, consistent with a catastrophic explosion. The discovery alone was monumental, but it was only the first step. The wreck was a war grave, and any examination had to be conducted with respect and non-intrusive methods. Advanced remote-operated vehicles and high-resolution sonar mapping in subsequent decades allowed for a detailed forensic examination without disturbing the site. The evidence was unmistakable. The damage was concentrated on the port side, forward of the bridge. The hull plates were blown inward, a signature characteristic of an external explosion, like a mine. There was no evidence of torpedo damage, which typically creates a different, more focused pattern of destruction. The wreck's position also aligned perfectly with the reconstructed track of the minefield laid by U-75. The forensic analysis provided the scientific verdict that eyewitness accounts and archives could not. HMS Hempshire had indeed struck a single German naval mine. The storm had not been her protection. It had been a key factor in her doom. The gale force winds had pushed the ship directly into the path of the hidden danger, and the violent seas had made survival nearly impossible. The century of speculation was over. The sea had yielded its evidence. The silent wreck of HMS Hampshire is the final chapter for Kitchener and his men, a war grave that ended a century of doubt. The loss removed a symbol of British resolve at a critical moment, a blow from which national morale never fully recovered. The enduring legacy of the Hampshire is not conspiracy, but the immense human cost of a war fought in the fog of uncertainty. For the families who waited generations, the discovery finally provided the closure of a definitive answer. The story of the Hampshire stands as enduring evidence of courage and the high price paid in the search for victory. Subscribe to Ocean Wreck for more stories from the deep.